March 13th, 1993, 4:45 in the morning, Keaton Beach, Florida, a quiet fishing village on the Gulf Coast where families sleep in homes built at ground level because this part of Florida does not flood. 12-year-old Spiridon Ibajeres is asleep in his bedroom. His parents are down the hall. Outside, the wind is picking up, but that is normal for coastal Florida. What is not normal is the sound that wakes them. Not rain, not wind, but water. Gulf water, rushing into the house. Within minutes, 12-foot waves are crashing through the walls. Spy and his family are jumping with each surge, trying to keep their heads above water inside their own home. The air temperature has dropped so fast that the ocean feels warmer than breathing. They are dunking themselves underwater to stay warm. This is Florida. This is March. And this is a winter storm producing hurricane-level storm surge that nobody saw coming. What made it worse? What nobody in Keaton Beach understood until the water was already inside was that forecasters had been warning about this storm for 5 days. The National Weather Service had called it perfectly, and it did not matter. 5 days earlier, meteorologists at the National Meteorological Center in Maryland were watching their computer models with growing alarm. It was March 8th. Dr. Louis Uccellini, the lead forecaster at the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center, was seeing something on the screens that did not fit any normal winter storm pattern. 3 separate jet streams, Arctic, polar, and subtropical, were converging over the Gulf of Mexico. An extratropical low was forming over Mexico. An Arctic high was building over the Great Plains. And Gulf water temperatures were sitting at 75 degrees, ready to fuel whatever came next. By March 9th, Uccellini's team was putting a major storm on the East Coast maps. Not just major, historic. By March 10th, the forecast was clear enough that several northeastern states declared emergencies before a single snowflake fell. This was the best 5-day forecast the National Weather Service had ever made. 100 million people were in the path. The warnings went out 2 days in advance. Blizzard warnings, storm warnings, hurricane-force wind warnings for the coast. And still, when it hit, America was not ready. The storm began to take shape on Friday, March 12th, as the disturbance moved off the Texas coast into the Gulf of Mexico. Meteorologists could see it on satellite, a swirling mass pulling in moisture from the Caribbean, cold air from Canada, and energy from the warm Gulf waters below. By 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the central pressure had dropped to 991 millibars. That's low. Dangerously low for a winter storm. Out in the Gulf, the system was undergoing what forecasters call bombogenesis, explosive intensification. The kind of rapid strengthening you see in hurricanes. But this was March. And the people living along Florida's Big Bend coast, places like Keaton Beach, Decla Beach, Steinhatchee, were about to experience something they had never trained for. A winter storm with a storm surge. By 11 p.m. Friday, a squall line was racing toward Florida's west coast and Cuba. Not a snow squall. A severe thunderstorm line with embedded tornadoes and straight-line winds exceeding 90 miles per hour. It hit northern Florida and western Cuba just after midnight. In Tampa, a waterspout came ashore at the Davis Islands Yacht Club at 5:30 a.m., lifting a 23-foot sailboat 300 feet through the air before smashing it into the seawall. 12 other boats were destroyed. 5 more broke loose from their cradles. And this was just the warm-up. Behind the squall line, the real monster was coming ashore. The storm's center made landfall just west of Tallahassee around sunrise with a central pressure of 975 millibars. That's the pressure of a Category 3 hurricane. But instead of tropical rain, this thing was wrapping cold air in from the west. The precipitation was transitioning to snow. And ahead of the center, the storm surge was already happening. At 4 a.m., families along Taylor County's coastline were jolted awake. Not by thunder, by water. The Gulf of Mexico was coming into their bedrooms. In some areas, the surge reached 12 feet. higher than the rooflines of single-story homes. People were drowning in their beds. Others, like Spy Ibeyeris, were fighting to stay above water as waves repeatedly filled their homes. The temperature was plummeting. Wet clothes became deadly. There was no evacuation order because nobody expected a winter storm to behave like this. Coastal flood warnings exist for hurricanes, but this was March 13th. Snow was falling 200 miles north, and here on the coast, people were drowning. By the time the sun came up, at least 7 people in Taylor County alone were dead. Some sources say 13. The exact count is still disputed because some bodies washed out into the Gulf and were never recovered. While Florida was being hit with tornadoes and storm surge, 300 miles northeast in the Great Smoky Mountains, 117 students and faculty from Cranbrook Kingswood Upper School in Michigan were settling into their tarpaulin shelters for the night. This was an annual survival training expedition. They had flown in on March 6th, broken into groups of 8 to 10, and spent the last week learning to navigate and survive in the wilderness. The weather forecast when they left Michigan called for rain, maybe some wind. Nothing unusual for the Smokies in March. But by Friday night, the wind was picking up. The temperature was dropping. And by 3 a.m. Saturday morning, their shelters were collapsing under the weight of something they had not packed for. Snow. Nearly 3 feet of it, falling at 2 to 3 inches per hour. The students woke up buried. 15-year-old Danielle Swank from Libertyville, Illinois, had asthma. As her group tried to descend through whiteout conditions, she started falling behind. Her instructor, James Woodruff, stayed with her, but the snow was covering their tracks faster than the others could follow. By midday Saturday, Swank and Woodruff were separated from the group. She had no coat. The temperature was well below freezing, her feet were packed in ice, and she spent the next 30 hours screaming into snowdrifts for help she knew would not come. Stories like this are why I built StormForge. If you want more real disaster breakdowns like this, consider subscribing. Now, back to what happened next. By Saturday afternoon, the storm had paralyzed the entire eastern seaboard. Snowfall totals were already breaking records. Mount LeConte in Tennessee, 56 inches. Mount Mitchell in North Carolina, 50 inches with 14-foot drifts. In Syracuse, New York, 43 inches fell under blizzard conditions. Pittsburgh had 25 inches with 10-foot drifts. But the real shock was farther south. Birmingham, Alabama was buried under 13 to 17 inches. Chattanooga, Tennessee recorded 20 inches, an all-time record that still stands. And these cities had no infrastructure for this. No salt trucks, no plows, no protocol. Roofs that were never engineered for snow loads began collapsing. The comedy club in Birmingham caught fire, and the fire department could not reach it through the drifts. Every interstate highway from Atlanta northeastward was closed. Every single one. Traffic did not just slow down, it stopped. People abandoned cars on Interstate 75, Interstate 85, Interstate 95. Some broke into Parkway Elementary School in Deep Gap, North Carolina, just to survive the night. 10 million people lost power. In isolated rural areas, the lights did not come back on for 3 weeks. What people did not understand, what made this storm so uniquely devastating, was that it was not one disaster. It was 4 disasters happening simultaneously. In Florida, it was a hurricane. There was storm surge, tornadoes, and winds of 90 miles per hour. Along the Appalachian Mountains, a blizzard dumped 56 inches of snow with drifts reaching 35 feet. On the coast from the Carolinas to Maine, it was a nor'easter with hurricane-force winds and homes falling into the ocean. And out at sea, it was something worse. The Gold Bond Conveyor, a Liberian-flagged cargo ship carrying gypsum ore from Halifax to Tampa, was caught in seas reaching 100 feet. The ship had survived the perfect storm 2 years earlier. The same ship, the same captain. But this time, winds of 90 miles per hour and mountainous waves caused the gypsum to shift and harden in the hold. Water poured in. The ship foundered roughly 60 nautical miles southeast of Sable Island, Nova Scotia. All 33 crew members went down with it. The Coast Guard rescued over 160 people from other ships in distress that weekend. 48 people total were reported missing at sea. More people drowned in this storm than in Hurricanes Hugo and Andrew combined. Back in the Smokies, rescue helicopters were finally able to fly on Monday afternoon. Danielle Swank had been alone for over a day. Her hands and feet were frostbitten. She was waving frantically when the helicopter spotted her. They hoisted her up and flew her to the University of Tennessee Medical Center.